All right, I see all the cool people have stayed behind. Thank you very much for this. I see a couple of familiar faces. So we're going to talk today about making productions accessible. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? I see a couple of heads nodding. Wonderful. So yes, thank you for coming. My name is Andrew Morris. I'm the president and executive producer at Hitsby Entertainment. I'm a white male. I have a trim beard with a 2-3 day old shaved head. The shaved part is 2-3 days old, not the head. Wearing a charcoal blazer over a light gray vest and blue jeans and my lovely blue suede shoes. Our session today is going to talk about just some basic information on how to make your productions accessible. We've got an amazing panel of experts here today that are going to talk about different aspects of how to make your production accessible and why it's sexy to do it in the first place. So I think you'll walk out of here realizing that making things accessible can end up leading to a wider audience and just having content that's more inclusive, that appeals to more people. I think the one thing that we need to keep in mind, just before I introduce the panelists, is that we're going to talk today about a couple different things. You're going to hear us talk about representation and accessibility, both having to do with people with disabilities. And we like to categorize these things a little bit differently, only because things to do with representation have to do with matters of training and education and awareness, which are all important things to do. Yet on the accessibility side, accessibility we have to keep in mind is a human right. So if, for example, you can't afford to hire a deaf actor or writer because you didn't budget for an ASL or deaf interpreter, that means that you're the cause of discrimination, and that's illegal. So we need to keep in mind just the difference of those two things when we're talking about them. But we're not here today to learn how to keep ourselves out of jail. We're here to because we recognize that when your content is inclusive and accessible, that everybody can participate in it, then it has wider appeal. It's recognized and appreciated by a group of people, wider audiences, aside from just being the right thing to do and obviously on side with the law. So it just makes common sense and it's good for everyone. So with that, I'd like to just mention who we are talking to today, and then we'll do full introductions as we actually speak. On my far right, your left, is Ron Rickford. He's an integrated described video consultant. And to his left, your right, is Winnie Look, Executive Director of the Disability Screen Office. And right beside me is Yvonne Felix, an inclusive design artist and content development executive. It's a mouthful, that's why I'm reading it off my page here. In terms of format today, we've got about 25 minutes. So because everyone's talking about something very different aspects of accessibility in the production sphere, I'm going to spend a couple minutes with each person and then we'll move on. And just so that you all know, we're going to open it up for questions early because we've done these panels before. We find that people have a lot of questions. So if you have something in mind, maybe get it ready, because after we do our first round with everyone, we're just going to open up the floor for questions. I believe we have a microphone that's passed around. Okay, you have it at the back. Wonderful. So with that, let's get started. Winnie, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Winnie Look. I am the inaugural Executive Director of the Disability Screen Office. I am a Chinese woman with short black hair. I'm wearing a long sleeve fluoro shirt with black pants and patent black shoes. And the Disability Screen Office, we are a national disability-led not-for-profit organization that advocates for accessibility rights and disability representation on and off the screen. Our vision is for a fully accessible Canadian screen industry with, again, fostering authentic representation within the media. And A little bit about our history. We were incubated by Accessible Media, Inc. We only became autonomous in September of 2022, and AMI at one point appointed our distinguished moderator as the interim executive director. So thank you, Andrew, for being instrumental in setting our foundation for the organization. And it's only April 1st, 2023. This is our very first year of operations, and April 1st is the beginning of our fiscal year. I think that's it.
That's great, thank you. And full disclosure, we're all friends. We know each other from somewhere or another. That's great. So tell me, thank you for the background on the DSO. What are you guys working on right now?
We are in full startup mode, and we did some consultations before I started. There were some consultations with the community, as well as when I first came on, I met with the board of directors individually and asked about their priorities within the first year, within the first 3 years. We came up with the consultations and our priorities, what we are working on right now. And one of them is very important, is sustainable funding in both our programming and operations. So putting a lot of applications and proposals in right now to get sustainable funding. We are prioritizing absolutely community engagement. So I'm out there meeting with as many folks as possible, listening to what their feedback is, letting them know what we are up to. We're also working on just being a subject matter expert and bring up our brand reputation, being a trusted resource for folks, letting people know that we are out there right now. We're sitting at a lot of roundtables. I'm constantly being asked to consult and sitting on roundtables across the country right now, consulting on reports, consulting on projects, writing support letters for people to apply for accessibility funding as well. Engagement, building brand. We are making sure and prioritizing that because we are a national organization, that we are representing coast to coast and north as well, because I do recognize that every province, every region might be working differently. So making sure that we are here to listen to those individual provinces and that we're going to be working and collaborating with folks within those provinces and territories as well to do our work. It is so important for us right now, especially in startup mode, to stretch ourselves, to collaborate and partner with folks doing this work, and also spotlighting and crediting people who are also doing this good work that has come before us. We're also wanting to launch 3 initiatives, and the very first one is a research project, which will culminate into a protocols and guideline and best practices for working with the disability community within the screen sector. Right now, there's very little data out there, very little research. So without data and research, how can we move forward? So that is a very important initiative. The second one is building a resource hub. So a one-stop shop of trusted resources that will be hosted on our website, and that would include assistive services and vendors, talent, so disabled talents and creatives, connecting folks with educational tools and programming, funding that would possibly be out there for accessibility as well. And then our third initiative is creating a production accessibility role. And this particular role, originally we're thinking of a coordinator role, very similar to an intimacy coordinator, or during COVID and pandemic when a health and safety coordinator came into the industry, just kind of like that. And so the production accessibility coordinator role, we thought about it a bit more, and we still have to kind of flesh it out, because we want this role to be inserted in the full life cycle of productions and for it to be influential. And so that there is proactive thinking in your productions and budgeting, and that budget and all the thought about accessibility and disability representation is thought of from the very beginning to the very end at every single level. Something we're advocating for right now is to be proactive in this, not to be reactionary, not to be, second, third, and just kind of an end thing that you put in or on request. It really is law. The Accessible Canada Act was enacted in 2019 by the federal government, and they want fully accessible Canada within 2040. And so again, disability representation is key, but accessibility is actually a human right and law. So those are the 3 initiatives we're also working on as well.
So did everybody get, that's a lot of notes there.
We're working on a lot right now. And it's just me.
Yeah, it's very
And an
exciting.
amazing board of directors, I should say.
I think this production accessibility role is very interesting and something that people should know about because, if you're planning a new production and you're not really sure what you're going to need in terms of making it accessible, I'm assuming is that what this person is going to do?
Yes, it's being, I don't want to say consultant, but the subject matter expert essentially in the room. So between whether it's your casting, your writers, your venues, literally everything. And when it comes to budgeting, just a rule of thumb, 20% of your budget should actually be saved for accessibility. It's, again, discriminatory if you don't have the budget for interpreters, for captioning, and then accessible venues. It's so important to make sure, some venues say that they are accessible, but there was a venue that one of my clients used last year that said they were accessible, but when we arrived, their washrooms had the dimensions, but there were no buttons, right? So our resource hub is going to help make sure that there are trusted venues or trusted resources, trusted tools. We're going to be vetting them to make sure when you go to our resource hub that you can find real accessible services, tools, and disability representation. Again, above the line, below the line, talent and creatives.
I love that. And I guess if you don't have a button on the washroom door, it's like you can get in, but you can't get out. I could actually use that at my house. There's people that I would like to
and
welcome.
we had to then put volunteers near the washrooms, essentially, to let folks in, and that's not accessibility.
Right. Okay, that's all great. And you'd mentioned that you've got a production hub or an information hub that's going to have all the information of where you can hire, I'm assuming, production accessibility coordinators. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we're hoping to formalize the training for it, and I should really give credit to Kia Amera, who is an American who actually created and developed this particular role. And there are production accessibility coordinators right now in the US, but unfortunately Canada, which is a little embarrassing, is very behind in this work. And so right now in Canada, there's only a handful of people doing this work, but we're hoping to formalize the training for it. And so you can look to our resource hub when that's up and running. When we have full graduates, you can be looking to them. And at this very moment, if you do need a production accessibility coordinator, reach out to us and we'll try to make those connections.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Winnie. We're going to move on to Ron. Hello, Ron.
Hello.
Would you mind just introducing yourself and maybe tell us about your background in the industry?
Sure. I'm Ron Rickford. I work for a company called TRS Media Accessibility, and I'm here today as a IDV consultant, but there we do describe video, IDV, closed captioning, things like that. Anything that to make things accessible on with media. So I got my start back in 2005, so I guess 18 years ago, with a company called Accessible Media Inc., AMI, where Winnie works. Or no, you're a part of that. Like
No, DSO is incubated by AMI.
It was incubated.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a connection
Yes.
somehow. Yeah, and so from there I started out video and audio editing, and then moved on to into the described video department, writing and producing, and then I moved on to IDV, and here we are now.
Okay, so this IDV thing, I've heard this term for quite a while. Tell me, so it stands for Integrated Described Video, and can just tell me, what is this thing? Like I think just for a primer, we all know what described video is, I'm assuming. That's like to make videos accessible for people who are blind and partially sighted. It's like a narrator that reads the action in between the dialogue. So what is Integrated Described Video?
Yeah, so Integrated Described Video, IDV, is it's basically a method for producing video content. And it's made for people who are blind and partially sighted, and it's made from the ground up, instead of where described video, where you make it after the fact in post-production. So we do that by adding key visual elements that they're incorporated from pre to post-production. You can do that through dialogue, music, sound effects, anything in between. Yeah, that's how
So is it like you just, I know what it is, I'm just trying to ask the questions that I think might be on people's minds. So is it like just, taking the described video and adding it earlier, like having a narrator come and talk over your show, just doing it earlier?
No, so with IDV, we lose the third voice. So rather than have a voiceover come in and fill in the blanks, we just try to make sure that everything's covered. So we do that by ensuring people don't use vague language, things like this, that, here, there. So rather than saying like pass me that, you'd say like give me the cup, just so it's people who are listening can understand what you're talking about. If you think about it, like when you're talking to someone on the phone, if you use that vague language, or if you hear it on the radio, those things don't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of like making a visual project and an audio project at the same time. It kind of reminds me of like how they make audio documentaries where everything is just better described because you don't have a picture. Is that basically it?
Yeah, and that was we did lean on those principles when we were creating IDV. We looked at best practices for creating television, movies, and radio as well. And now with podcasting, we incorporate that stuff as well.
Cool. So, at your role as an IDV consultant, what do you do in the process? How does it work?
Well, it depends on the kind of content, but usually, let's say from the beginning, I would be training everyone who's involved with the production on IDV. So that goes from everyone from like the sound person, video person, producer, director, and yeah, basically anyone who's involved, because there are a lot of small pieces that go on in a production, and everything affects everything else. So you don't want like the director to make a conscious decision. Okay, we're gonna shoot this scene, and we need all these elements to make it accessible. And then after you have the audio person in post being like, oh, I don't want those footsteps because that's gonna interfere with my music. So they take out those footsteps, but the director originally wanted those footsteps in there to to let someone who's blind or partially sighted know that someone is moving to another location.
Right. Cool. So I'm curious about why it was developed in the first place, though. If described video did the job, why did we need IDV?
Well, so it originally started. Again, I was at AMI at the time, and they're a national broadcaster. They started getting into original production, and the original process is the production teams would go out, shoot their content, create it, go through post and everything, and then they would send it to the described video department, and then after we would add description to it. Now the issue there is that the content that they were creating was usually so tightly edited that when they gave it to us, there wasn't really much room, if any, for descriptions. So we weren't really making compelling content for someone who's blind or partially sighted. It was mostly just like talking heads. And there was like a lot of visual elements that were there that weren't being incorporated. So, we took a couple steps, and it evolved slowly. The first was, they were like, okay, well, how about we leave some spaces for you guys to, add some descriptions, which we did. But the problem with that was that it messed with the pacing of the show. You have it going, and then all of a sudden there's like, a 20-second gap where they give us to describe some stuff, and it really broke up the action. It didn't feel natural. But eventually, yeah, what we landed on was the where we get in from the beginning. They give us the concept. If it is just like stuff in the field, that's stuff that's more captured live and naturally, then we would we'd be there at the beginning to kind of like let them know what to look out for depending on the location, the type of people they're dealing with, and the type of situations they're going to be in. And then also when it came at the end, not at the end, but like during the production, they would send us like, like rough cuts, and we'd work through it with them to finesse all the accessible elements, And then, but with scripted, it's a little bit different. So we'd get in more on the scripting phase, and like we'd read the script and kind of like envision the way everything looks and sounds, and try to guide them through that process.
Cool. I really like the sound of this because it sounds like it's one version for everybody. So I'm thinking, okay, I have a TV show or a web series. Sorry, everybody. I have a web series that could play for a sighted audience, for a blind audience. They could sit on the couch side by side and everyone enjoy the show. It could also be on an audio platform. Like, there's just a lot of possibilities for making content that's accessible like that.
Yeah.
It's just an observation. I like it. Yvonne, hi.
Hi.
Could you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure, but I do feel this obligation, just because I don't know if there's anyone else in the room who has partial sight or can't see, that there's this dynamic happening with that light. And I, for a moment, felt that I was reaching towards the other side, and the DSO and IDV would be waiting for me, which is a blind person's heaven. So
I was going to offer to trade seats with you, but now I kind of want to trade seats because I want to go to the other side too.
It's hypnotic.
Do you want to trade seats? Are you okay?
I mean, it's too late now. I'm there.
Come on.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It might help. I don't know.
This is an
Might
accessibility.
bring me back to reality.
This is an accessibility accommodation.
Oh, that makes a big difference. Wow.
Oh, wow.
So what did you ask me?
If you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do, aside from complaining about the light in front of us.
So I'm Yvonne Felix. I'm an accessibility and inclusion story and script consultant. I will describe myself as having dark hair with it pulled back, and I am various tones of pale, except a little burnt in the face from walking outside yesterday. And I'm wearing these really great, chunky combat boots that are reptile print, I think, and that matters because it's the only thing I can see, really. And yeah, that's me.
Great. Okay, so you're here to talk about you being a script consultant. Tell me about that kind of work. What is it that you do? What do you consult on?
Yeah, so I get scripts, but I take the scripts as more than just the dialogue and some interludes onto sort of where things are, because you get so little information in terms of what that is actually going to look like. And I know probably a lot of that happens in the process, but I like to look at a script in terms of the dialogue, the character, and I like to look at it from a 30,000-foot view and think of it as an ecosystem. I like to imagine what the next episode is going to be. Like, I think about the longevity of the story, and I like to imagine how each character interacts with each other. So I like to think of things in layers. Like, you just have sort of this surface thing that the audience is going to engage in, which is either visual or audio, and then you have the psychological piece of who are these people, how do they work together, and then where are they, and where are they in time and space. And I love thinking about it in this like very graphic, tactile, contextual way, and just imagine that I'm there with each character and where they are in time, and follow them on the journey of the story.
Now, your expertise and often what you're asked to come and contribute to on scripts is items relating to accessibility and representation and how characters are portrayed on screen that maybe the writer didn't have access to or that the production didn't have access to. So could you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how does accessibility and representation play into what you do?
Yeah, it's something that I think is pretty crucial to audience engagement, and taking into consideration, like usually when someone reaches out, there's a very specific need. They're including someone with either blindness or an intersecting lived experience, and I'm fortunate to have many experiences and intersecting with blindness. But in terms of accessibility, you know, there is representation of one, and then there is being able to reach people at every sort of point of origin in life. And I imagine that if I'm, you know, an audience member, you either know someone who has blindness or a disability, you know someone that has, you know, an intersection with disability, it could be happening to you. And so the more you incorporate sort of the nuances without being didactic in what the experience is, the more people you're going to reach, because they either know someone or they have an experience themselves. And then it really depends on the story too, how you incorporate accessibility.
Right. Okay. And and time has flown by here. I was thinking that we'd have a lot of time for questions. We will take a couple questions after. But my last question for you, Yvonne, is if you make everything super accurate with the point of trying to make your representation extremely authentic and true to exactly how it is, could you not be taking away from the drama or the comedy? Because as we all know, what happens on screen is dramified and maybe not as it actually appears in real life. So how do you navigate making sure that the story still is a fun story or interesting story, but still you're representing people authentically?
Yeah, I think authenticity is incredibly important, but again, it depends on the story. So for example, if it's a sci-fi script and that's the story, and we're talking about a person who is blind in space, hasn't happened before, don't really know what that's going to look like, don't know what the technology is going to be involved with. So, you know, there are characteristics that I think about when someone who is viewing someone with blindness, or someone who is blind on set, or who is an actor, or someone who's portraying this, there are characteristics to consider, but how someone would navigate through space that's up to the writer, that's up to the story. And I'd like to think of it as there's a creative process that I want to support, and so how can I support that storytelling, and how can I support the creative process? And you know, when you're thinking about another story, like maybe it's someone who is being charged, they're blind, they're in a courtroom, those are more specific. There's more knowledge, and as Tuwini pointed out, there's more data available. And that's also too where I try to, it's not just about my own lived experience. I stay connected to community. I am consulted by others when I want to know and be more informed, so that I can better inform the story and support the entire creative process.
Great. Okay. I think we are actually at time. Okay. And if there's any questions that we actually don't get to, we are going to hang around after. So please come find us. We're all wearing the fancy clothes here. Oh, except Ron. We have one question. Could we microphone here to the back? Yeah.
Hi. So my question is, as a content creator, when thinking about accessibility with using captions, also what we call subtitles, because on social media it's a bit confusing to say captions, what are some tips you would recommend that creators keep in mind? Because right now we're seeing a lot of content where everyone's trying to grab attention. So you see a lot of like flashing on the screen text, and I sometimes don't think it's curated to actually meet the needs of why captions were made in the first place. So what would your advice be for creators who are still trying to attract audiences, but at the same time still being inclusive to the disability community?
Can I just ask for clarification? Do you mean like some best practices for captioning, or why we should use subtitles in the first place?
Best practices, because I think we all should know the reason we did it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if we have anyone on the panel. Ron, do you have experience with captions? Not to that degree. I don't know. Do you have experience with captions?
Not that I should inform anyone on.
What about you?
Not to that detail, except for the fact that you should be having it.
The best thing or the only thing I can tell you at this point, just like none of us are really captioning experts. We're the people that hire the captioning experts. But there are best practices documents available. The one that I know of, did you want to?
Oh, no, I was going to say that, like, if you're like really interested, could I meet up with you after, get your information, and then I can pass it on to some of my closed caption? Yeah?
Yeah, so just as I was saying, there are some best practices documents available. I think the one that most of the sort of TV and film industry go by is with the Canadian Association of Broadcasters. Interestingly, I looked it up the other day and it wasn't there. But if you do a Google search for closed caption best practices Canada or something like that, there is a guide that does explain all the best practices. So you could probably take those and transfer all the knowledge onto the subtitling. I apologize that we don't have the exact expert here today, but Ron will certainly provide some information after.
Hopefully, we'll eventually have it in our hub as well.
Yeah, it will be on the hub, yeah. Do you have time for one more? Okay. Is there anyone else that had a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm James. Hi. Thanks very much for the engaging discussion so far. I actually work in sound design and post-sound. I've just got a question about the integrated format you were talking about. Are there specific guidelines on how to achieve that in a piece of media, and is it a piece of certification that goes along with it?
That's you.
Yeah, so there are different degrees. If you go to AMI's website, you can find the best practices guide there, and that can get you started. There's also a web series called the Creator Series, I think it is, and that has like a bunch of little 5-minute like webisode kind of things, like taking you through like different scenarios that can help get you started. Yeah, but like as far as like certification, do you mean like certification to be like an IDV consultant, or just like more just to get your content to be IDV friendly?
I guess both. I guess those are both great points. Whether it's sort of like saying, okay, our sound company is now able to do that, or also like whether it's something that piece of media specifically has to say this is that certification now.
Yeah. So just like for getting like like the content to be certified, there's no like actual like certification or anything, but there are experts who are doing it, who like myself, and there's a few others who can help you with your content to get it to be IDV ready. But as far as like learning it, learning how to do it, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll just thank you, Ron. I'll close off by saying if you go to and they're not paying me. If you go to ami.ca and scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is an accessibility or an accessible formats or something like that. And on that page, you can select integrated described video as one of the types of accessibility. And there's a best practices guide there. There's a white paper. There's some sample videos of before and after. And it will give you a primer on how it all works.
Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. We are over time. Thank you very much, Leah, for letting us go over. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please stay tuned. Well, not tuned, but please stick around for the next panel, which is Womb Envy. I know that show. A case study in accessible content presented by the Canada Media Fund. Thanks, everybody.